guys? It's Coach Gaglione here from GaglioneStrength.com. This is another edition of the Powerlifting for the People podcast. Got another strong lady on the line today. Annie, how you doing today?
I am doing awesome. Thanks for having me. This is always fun to catch up with you. Always fun to kind of shoot the shit with people. So,
of course, yeah, it's a fun time. So for people maybe listening for the first time, maybe they're not familiar with who you are, can you just give us a little quick background of who you are, where you're from, and what you got going on right now?
Oh, man. Well, it all started on a dark and stormy night in the 80s, and I was born. Now, a little bit about me. I am currently living in Memphis, Tennessee. I've been living here for a few years. I'm the general manager of NBS Fitness, and I do a little bit of strength coaching as well. Super awesome outfit down here. In the past, I've done some collegiate strength coaching. I've done some clinical coaching as far as rehab, working with physical therapists. And then I've always kind of just jumped back into the private sector. So cool. For the past 5 or so years, I've been in the private sector, coaching a variety of different athletes, narrowing down my niche pretty well, and kind of developing my network.
Very cool. So I want to rewind a little bit, maybe not so far to like the dark and stormy night, like that far, but a little bit in the past. So how did you kind of get started training? Just, it doesn't necessarily need to be like anything competitive, but like how did you start like kind of lifting, exercising, and kind of like what got you kind of into fitness initially?
Oh man, so it was kind of fate, I think. I was 16 years old and I needed a job. And me and my friends were actually walking, because we didn't have cars because I was poor, to a grocery store to get a bagging job. And we passed by this gym, and we didn't know it was a gym. We just knew it was loud, and there was lots of huge people inside. And we just, like freaking bugs to a light, flew in there. And we were offered jobs. So, it really took care of that need. But a really cool thing happened, and somebody took me under their wing and mentored me, and I really caught the bug then. And I ended up pursuing college, going into exercise physiology, later got another degree in nutrition, and was diagnosed with diabetes. So I thought, well, that's freaking embarrassing. I need to get it together. Started lifting weights, kind of fell in with the powerlifting team that we had up there. It wasn't really a team. It was just a loose association of people who sometimes did powerlifting, and from there, I just started pursuing it full bore as a career.
Cool. So, so what
are we frozen? I think we might be frozen.
No, I can hear you. You're fine. So I might be frozen, but can you hear me okay? Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so what kind of made you like take the jump from?
Yep, I can.
Good. What kind of made you take the jump from kind of going to the gym to being like a little bit more competitive, and obviously like, what made you kind of decide to pursue this like actually in education and kind of make this like a career like for yourself? Was there any kind of defining moment or like any series of things, or did you kind of feel like you kind of fell in love with it like right away, or how did that like work out?
So I'll tell you, I think that I started like a lot of people do start, and I just wanted to look better. I wanted to feel better. Suddenly I had this this condition from being out of shape that freaked me out, and that was not okay with me. And I was really fortunate to fall in with a really good crew of people that introduced me to powerlifting. Now, I did not immediately fall in love with powerlifting, but I was introduced to the competitive idea of squat, bench, and deadlift. Yeah. And I was exposed to it over time, and I was able to get really excited for other people. I didn't compete for several years after being kind of introduced to it. But what made me really love strength sports was it took the focus away from, I want to look a certain way, to, well, I can do that and I can perform a certain way. So it gave me a different metric to really appreciate myself, which at that point in time, body acceptance wasn't a huge thing. And, I was also in my early 20s, so kind of stumbling around trying to find a way to love the body that I had was really difficult based on mirror and reflection alone. So There was this really powerful moment of, I'm really freaking strong now, or I'm doing things that I could never do before, that was just measurable, objective, personal improvement, and I loved that. And I've never fallen out of love with that. And that's kind of, those are the magic moments. And I can't say it all happened at one time, but it certainly was something that I kept reflecting on and going, oh my gosh, this is like a powerful experience that I'm living in. It was really cool.
Yeah, I just want to kind of highlight what you talked about is about like strength training being objective and measurable, and I know like with the women I've worked with in the past too, getting them to focus a little bit like away from the scale, a little bit like off like maybe how they look, how their abs look, or whatever, how their stomach looks, and a lot of times the body changes will happen as a result of like the hard training like anyway, but it gets their mind a little bit focused on performance, and I think you can kind of elicit some other different benefits and goals kind of moving forward. So. I think that's really great advice, and I think that's great insight to hear from yourself. So you're going through education, you're doing all this stuff. What was your first like kind of competition a powerlifting meet? Was it a different or did I know because I know you do strongman and some different things now, but what was like your first competition like, and then what kind of led you to kind of dabble in all these different like kind of iron sports?
Sure. So the very first thing I ever did competitively, and this is kind of weird, it was a bikini contest.
Nice.
And it was, and I have nothing but respect for bikini competitors. It was the most work I had done to that point for the least thrilling experience. And though I had a good time, placed totally fine, there was something missing. And there was this need to be and feel like a badass that I still to this day have that was just not there. Yeah. And but that's the category my body fit in at the time. It's since evolved and changed. And after that, I said, you know what? It was cool to fulfill a promise to myself, which was competing in this bikini contest. But it really didn't grab me the way I thought it did. So I started thinking about the pictures in my head that would motivate me to get through things. And it was always people doing incredible things. And that was lifting, and that was generally doing well in the world. Those are the things that really inspired me. And bikini wasn't it. So I talked to a few friends that I had at the time, and they said, well, you're always around these powerlifting meets. You've got great coaches around you. Why don't you give that a go? And I did, and John, my life totally changed at that moment. It was a totally different world for me.
Cool. And then I know like since then we've got. Can you hear me? Okay, Annie.
No? Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so obviously that was kind of like a life changing. Obviously, powerlifting has been like a big part of like the business that you're in. Always kind of I think the first time we met was at a seminar in New Jersey. We've since kind of got to cross paths at like a lot of these elite FTS events. What has it been like just kind of like transitioning from that to like going through your education, going through doing some collegiate stuff to being in the private sector and having like just kind of being in this culture like all the time? Like what are some kind of things that you've kind of like learned along the way, and like how did you kind of like end up in like the role that you're in now?
So the first thing that I'll say that has given me just a huge advance over everyone else is environment is absolutely everything. And I was really fortunate early on to be in the hands of really great strength coaches where I was. I got to intern under some really cool strength coaches. They offered me kind of a minor position as I was leaving, or for a couple years there before I jumped back into the private sector. And the big focus there was always continual improvement, not only for me physically, but also emotionally, and also with my education. I went on and got a master's degree and then hopped into the clinical sector because I wanted to help people, and I thought that was the most grave opportunity to do so. Didn't have much passion for it, but I was still in the best hands I could have been in at that time. And then from there, I sought out great minds. Maybe not the best lifters in the world, though I oddly have been able to meet those people and kind of connect with them. But the people that really, really wanted to use this profession as something more than a sexy thing to say at a bar. Oh, I'm a personal trainer. Oh, I'm a strength coach. Like, super sexy thing to say to people. The other thing is that you get to help people with that career. So I was able to really find and seek out people that were improving and always trying to get ahead up with their education and always trying to help people with what they're learning. And it came back down to finding the right environment. And I'm really fortunate that I did, and I landed where I did with the people that I did.
Yeah, I mean that's something that always kind of I've noticed. Just like you guys kind of travel in like little packs at these events and stuff, and I've always kind of gravitated to you and always have a good time, just like kind of shooting the shit and catching up and just like kind of talking shop. Whether it's like talking about lifting or not, I feel like it's always like a good, insightful conversation, and I think the relationships that you make and the people that you surround yourself with really does make a difference. It's kind of cliche, but it's like the 5 people you kind of hang around. It's like they say it's like you're the average of the 5 people you hang around, or whatever the quote is. But I think it really rings true. And so if you want to be a strength coach, if you want to be a great lifter, just kind of be around people that are better than you. Be around people that have similar goals, that are like minded. I think that's like really great advice. So.
Oh yeah, it has me constantly thinking. Something that I really appreciate, and also that really grinds my gears, is that any programming that we put out or any coaching that we do, if it's crap, it doesn't stay crap. Somebody tells me, Annie, that's crap, and then I'm going, okay, I'll fix it, or help me understand why it was crap. And it's cool to have such good minds around me. And I'm glad you mentioned that when we do travel, you hang out with us, the pack's kind of open to everybody. Like, we like to reach out and pull people in and say, what do you know? Like, what can you add? What can we add for you? Like, what is the right way to progress concurrently with each other?
Yeah, I've always taken something from our conversations personally, and just like the conversations with other staff members and stuff. And I think that's really valuable. And I know even for myself, it's like it can be really easy to get complacent. It can be really easy to kind of just be like, oh well, this is like how we do it. But it's still like like for me, like I go all over speaking. I'm like at every meet, I'm coaching people. And I coach like some world record lifts and things like that. But I'm still like going to these events. I'm still trying to get a little bit better. I just like went to West Side to like visit Louie and all this stuff. And I think that's like one of the things I love about your group is that you're always kind of striving for that personal progress. You're always striving for that personal growth. And I think that's really good advice, whether it be like lifting or life. Like there's always more, and there's always like more to learn, and there's always like ways to get better. So I think that's just a really good point. So I know you kind of bounced around with some different jobs. So one thing I wanted to ask you. Also, just on the business like end of things, or like the career end of things, if someone was like kind of as a female, you're getting into you want to be a strength coach, you want to be a personal trainer, or maybe you want to work for a gym, what advice would you give to women who are maybe getting into the field? There's so much like out there that you see all this stuff on social media and Instagram. Like, what advice can you give to women who are starting out, who want to like kind of make this their career, and they want to get into like the fitness or the strength coaching business?
All right, so a few things that I've noticed kind of about our industry is it is a male-dominated industry for sure, especially when you really start specializing in strength sports or you start to develop a specialization. That being said, the only roadblock you have is yourself. Nobody said, "Oh, you've got ovaries. You're not a strength coach." Nobody said that. In fact, most places that I've been have been overjoyed to have kind of a female addition to their team.
Sure. Yeah.
So understanding that like nobody's keeping you out of the sport, nobody's keeping you out of the field, is numero uno, and I think that's a very powerful realization. We tend to roll over when we're not selected for strength coaching jobs or something like that. It's probably not because of our gender necessarily. Right. It could be a blaring lack of experience. It could be a lack of education. Those are the things that you attack. So I know that there's this huge pendulum of like education's not everything, and then education is everything. It is something. And if it does nothing else, seek out education, because it gives you the best bullshit meter you could possibly have. And I think in our industry that's hugely important, because you don't necessarily need a college degree. And I don't think you learn everything in college that you're going to learn on the job. But you're going to meet a lot of people that are phenomenal bullshitters. And you have to be able to discern if what they're telling you is valid, or if it makes sense, or if you need to discard their insight completely. So seek out the education, and always be seeking that out. It's not over after college. So that would be the first thing, is because you can really make up that gap in education just by trying. And the other thing is start seeking out experiences. For me, I never said no for a long time. It's actually a real problem for me now. Chronically traveling, but
I feel you on that.
I gotta start saying no to some things. But in the very beginning, every internship that was offered to me, I took, and every learning experience I took, and every bit of shadow that I saw became available, I took it, and I sought it out, and I asked for it, and I asked questions. I just think that seeking out smart people and seeking out experiences and seeking out education are going to take you so far, and then confidently look for jobs that you want. I thought I wanted to be a collegiate strength coach. I found out I didn't. Yeah. I found out that I'm much happier in the private sector, and I landed exactly where I needed to be. But I sought out exactly the jobs I thought I wanted, and I actually ended up getting them, and I got to discern for myself what was the right path for me. So you got to be ballsy. And there may be a ton of people that tell you no, and there may be a ton of people that are going to feed you this line of crap that you're going to have a harder road than anyone else. And you don't believe that. That's not the case.
Yeah, I think that's really good advice. And I think also, too, just like putting yourself out there, going to do these internships in person, going to seminars, educating yourself. I know, like, now it's, like, so easy just to, like, watch a YouTube video or go on, read an article, but it's really not the same, and you're not networking with the people. You're not, like, actually shaking hands with them. You're not, like, actually developing these relationships in person. So I think that's, like, really good advice, too. And I think going back to, like, the private or collegiate sector, I think it's, like, good. Do some experiences in a private sector. Do some experience collegiate. Visit strength coaches that maybe you look up to. We have people that I'm sure, like, same at your gym, we have people visit us all the time. Shadow, we have internship programs ourselves. That stuff I feel like is invaluable, and one of the things that we take a lot of pride on is, like, getting our interns actually there that are working in the field, like, later on, which always makes us feel good. So, but you have to get that initial experience first, and I think, like, doing it in person, just like kind of like lifting weights. You can watch a video, or you can go to a seminar and actually do it, or actually get onto the bar. But this stuff, actually doing it in real life, is gonna give you those experience. So I think that's really good advice. So this could be like professionally or like personally, like in your training. But I always also like to ask, have you had like any like major setbacks? It could be like injuries, or it could be maybe like life stuff or whatever that kind of set you back a little bit. And how did you kind of like overcome that, if so?
Sure. So I've had a few life events, and I think you could look at them as setbacks, but for me, they were catalysts. Okay. One big thing that happened for me that was hugely influential when I was 15, about the time I was looking for that job at that grocery store. The reason I was doing that, my own father had actually passed away, and during the time that he was sick, I was able to meet with his physical therapist that came in and saw him every single day, and that really planted the bug. And that lit a fire that I haven't extinguished, which is amazing. So I do think that there is every opportunity in the world to look at that experience and go, okay, the breadwinner in our family is gone. We're suddenly in a pretty scary situation financially. I'm going to roll over and die here. Or you go, well, how am I going to get over this? And that's the big question you always have to be asking yourself. And not only how am I going to get over this, but how am I going to do this situation justice? I'm going to do this situation justice by just completely crushing it the rest of my life. And that was a huge catalyst moment for me, was that I was not going to let a scenario dictate the path I took. And it was awesome. And that is kind of a big moment for me. I think then when I got into college, I got to say, man, I've been super, super fortunate to have such a smooth life. I don't know where there's some wood to knock on, but I've had such a smooth, I've had good friends. The relationships I've been involved with have been, healthy, even till they had to be terminated. They've just been good. And from that, I've had a resolve to live a good life for the people that have been in it, which has been really cool for me. As an iron sport athlete, so I've done quite a bit of powerlifting, done a ton of strongman, and now do some physique and stuff like that. You're always going to be riddled with injuries. So there's always that to kind of work your way around, and I think that's where seeking out people that are talented with mechanics and people that are qualified with athletes is really, really important. So, there's always going to be these things that feel like giant setbacks or unovercomable things. Yeah. But there's always a way, man. There's always a freaking way. And if nothing else tells you that, when you see videos of people with their prosthetic limbs powerlifting,
sure,
who am I to be like, oh, my back hurts a little bit, or oh, I've torn a bicep, or something like that,
Yeah, I think that's true. I think that's a really common theme. I just did another podcast recently today, and it's like you could always find a way. You could always find some way to work around it. And I also think, like, I really liked what you said about it. Like, instead of being a setback, a catalyst. I think never thought of it like in that language. I think that's great. Like we always say, like you could win or you learn. So like you could always like learn from those experiences. You could always find the positive like in it. There's always that silver lining they say. So I think that with every bad experience, because obviously if you don't have any bad experiences, how do you know like what's good and how can you appreciate those good times? So I think that's really good advice, and I think it's good. It obviously always sucks in the moment when those things happen, but if you can reflect and look back and like learn from it and move forward and grow, it's just like training. Like the stress is like what makes you better. The stress is what makes you adapt. So it's just like in life. So I think that's really
it's our
really good stuff.
super compensation model.
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
yeah.
Oh shit! Oh, but I'm up here now. Like it's cool. It's cool to see the parallels.
Very cool. And then, you touched on it, you kind of dabbled in like a lot of different sports, some like more physique oriented, some more performance oriented. Tell us kind of like what your training looks like. Do you kind of change your training based on what your competition schedule is? Does it kind of change throughout the year? Because I know like a lot of women, like they want to maybe look lean, they want to be strong and fit, they kind of want the best of both worlds. So kind of how do you, and I know like you, like, I don't, everyone's opinion of themselves is obviously different, but you say like relatively like lean and like fit year round from what I see. I'm sure like obviously stage ready is a different kind of animal, but you say like fit like year round and stuff. So tell me a little bit about like how you kind of balance like your own training and maybe some mistakes you made in the past and like how you're kind of doing things currently moving forward.
Sure. So at the base of everything is nutrition. I just don't sleep on nutrition, and I think that that's huge. I actually a pretty considerable amount every single day. And right now, I'm not doing anything really crazy. I'm eating about the same amount of protein, carbs, and fats every single day. So nothing crazy, but I do pack my meals. I do make sure it has everything that I need that I can kind of rely on. One, it just makes my life easier. It's really, really stressful to be like, oh, I'm on this hunt all day long for my next meal, especially if you eat multiple times a day. I don't like that life. It interrupts my work life. It interrupts my personal life. It interrupts my training life. Just get the meals, get everything handled on the front end. So I'm always kind of taking care of my diet with a little bit more freedom in the like what I would call off season. The other thing is just scheduling things out appropriately. So I'm at the point right now where gaining size isn't really something that I need to do to stay competitive. So that's really cool. And the trade-off is I get to stay a little bit leaner and kind of play around a little bit more. So I'm no longer in this gotta gain size, gotta get bigger. I'm exactly where I need to be in terms of size for figure. And I try to plan out my competition a year in advance. So making sure that I have enough time to adequately prepare for a competition if it's strength-based. So I kind of stick to strongman or powerlifting. I'll make sure I have a good 12, 16-week training cycle in. And I hire a coach for that every time. I never do my own programming because it's just too much in my head to work out. I just don't like to do it. So I make sure I have 12, 16 weeks, whatever they prefer to prepare for any strength event, peak, and then I decide where to go from there. A lot of times I'll turn around, jump right into a prep because I should have been eating enough food at that time. I do not really get out of hand as far as body composition, so I usually am in a pretty good spot to prep up for a show. So I try to make sure there's plenty of space in between them. I think I've had somebody ask before, my mother actually. I was at a figure competition, and she goes, okay, is this the one where you put things over your head? And I'm like totally bronze in a sparkly bikini, and I was like, no, Mom, that was 6 months ago, but So you just make sure that you have enough time to adequately prepare. I've fudged the bucket on that before, and I will rush a prep, and I just don't bring my best package to stage. You can bring your best package, you can bring your worst package, but the 10 weeks that you're doing a diet and prepping still sucks. It's still going to be really terrible. So better off just giving up the amount of time they need to adequately prepare for it.
Yeah, I think that's good advice. I know I'm sure, like, you're a very busy person. We were kind of talking before, like, off camera, like, it's like, like, all the travel and getting on the plane and stuff, so it can get crazy. I know for me, like this year, I just did a deadlift-only contest, and, like, that was it. Like, that's all I really had time for this year, and I try and compete once a year, and, like, if I do more, great. If I, but I just try to, like, at least compete once a year, and I know, like, I think sometimes people, like, they want to try and do too much, or they have other stuff going on, or don't be afraid to space it out. Don't be afraid to take your time. Be patient. There's always going to be another time to do a show. There's always going to be another meet. I think that's good. Like, trying to cram, all these meets like close together, and you know you don't really realize it when you're young, but all those like it's a lot of wear and tear on your body from like if you're doing powerlifting or strongman to do all these like heavy lifts back to back, all these preps back to back, trying to peak, trying to like overreach, and I'm sure dieting too, like just getting that lean and getting in that condition. I'm sure like there's probably only so many times your body can kind of handle doing that in like in a period of time. So I think that's good advice too. Cool. So just also on the training end of thing, one thing I always like to ask the women, we talked about the business side of things, but also talking about the training side of things. A lot of women are kind of afraid to maybe like go into a powerlifting gym. Maybe they're afraid of lifting weights. They're not really sure like where to start. If someone's just kind of like getting into like strength training or getting into just like lifting weights in general, like what's some like general advice you'd give someone who's like kind of on the fence or really not sure like what first step to take?
Okay. So the first thing that I would do is get with a coach and get with somebody that's really good in person, and not just somebody that markets themselves well. Do some research, talk to their past clients, see who they've worked with in the past. Getting with a coach, somebody that has experience in whatever iron sport it is, or at least coaching whatever sport it is. I'm no longer of the impression that you personally need to be a world record holder to coach to a world record,
sure.
But you do need to have the ability to relate with athletes and understand where they're at in a lot of ways. So I think getting with a coach that knows exactly what they're doing to at least build your foundation. And I know that sounds really scary financially for people, but you're building a base, and you're building this base that you can build off of. You're creating motor patterns. You're working with somebody to make sure that you can feel what you're supposed to feel, and you can auto-regulate as you go. So the most important thing I think you can do is get with a coach for at least some period of time. I don't think it's a question of should you work with a coach. It is really more of a question of how long should you work with a coach. Now, if one-on-one personal training is not on the table for you forever, no problem. Most people do some sort of remote work as well, which is a lot more affordable.
Yeah.
And then from there, just start doing your research on what you like and why you like it. So I think it's very empowering to be able to lift heavy weights. I also like the impact it has on my physique. So for me, it's a no-brainer. Those are the two things I like. I'm going to pursue those two aspects of it. Start looking into why it is that you're drawn towards any certain type of exercise, and go full bore. I mean, it's your time it's your hobby, and you should pursue the very best of it, because that's how you're going to be able to give your very best.
Cool. I know you talked about like hiring a coach, and I know you talked about I've probably like lost clients because I'm like I agree. Like I think in-person coaching, especially if they're a beginner, is like really is the better way to go, if that's possible. It's not always the case, but whether it's in person or remote, like what are some things that you'd like look for? Or, like what are like I know you said that coaches need coaches too. I've hired coaches in the past for myself. Like what are some things that you'd like look for in a coach when you're kind of starting out? Like what are some maybe red flags, or what are some things that probably means it's a good fit for you?
What I like to see out of people, if I was a beginner, I would say work with somebody that has worked with beginners. And I think you can probably attest to this. As you kind of go along, you're constantly having to reset your paradigm on how you're coaching each person.
Yeah.
You certainly don't coach somebody's first time under the bar the way you probably coach wheels. You probably don't coach those people exactly the same. There's probably some similarities, but the beginner's going to have some pretty serious needs, as do your top tier athletes. So I think finding somebody that does work with beginners that can speak to you in a way that you understand, I think that's also very important. I think you're really great at this, and you talk to people exactly where they're at, if that makes sense. If I go in there and I start talking to a 16-year-old girl that's coming in for the first time about external rotation of the hip and making sure she's getting good torque and she's just not start talking about vector forces and throwing your neutral spine. Those are not words she's going to understand, right? Yeah. So being able to speak to them where they're at is really important. So I think the very first conversation is important. Making sure they do have some track record. Education's really great. Again, I'm a big proponent of getting a good education. It's not everything. And then making sure that you have a personality match. I will not work with somebody that I'm scared to death to talk to. Some people are really motivated by their super scary coach. Make sure that your coach has a good personality for you.
Yeah, I think the experience is big. I think like see who they've worked with is good. I don't think like them like having to like squat 1,000 pounds is the most important thing in the world. I think it's more about like the athletes they've developed. I always like to see like not just like have they worked with like the best of the best, like have they worked with like intermediates, have they worked with novices, have they worked with like special populations and things like that. And I think the personality thing is really big. That's something I always like. You got to like mesh well. You have to have a good like relationship. You have to have good communication with the coach. And if you don't have like good communication, and you don't kind of vibe well with the person, they could have like the best program for you. And if you're not going to adhere to it, and you're not really feeling them as a person, that's going to be really challenging too. So you got to like kind of mesh well. Like we've had lifters come and go. It's just like their philosophy is a little bit different than like what we preach, and that's okay. And maybe they're a better fit for another program. But if we're like I tend to be a little bit more conservative on like the volume and things like that because I'm a little bit more worried about longevity of the athlete versus like trying to really try and make sure like this next 3 months you're going to like put the most amount of pounds in your total. And that may be fine. So it kind of just depends on like where you're at. So like for me, like I'd rather be thinking more like 5 or 10 years down the road. What am I doing to this athlete's body? I still want him to have a great result like in the short term, but also like this, it's like there's consequences for what you do like today, like down the road. So I think it's really important that you kind of look at those things too. So
absolutely, 100%.
Very cool. I think this is really great advice. Annie, I could talk to you all day, but I don't want to keep you too long. And it looks like we're not freezing anytime soon, so I don't want to push our luck on the Skype, but crossing our fingers. But I know you do some like in-person stuff, remote stuff. But if people like want to follow you or kind of like learn more about the gym, where can they check you out?
Sure. So social media, I'm Annie Gunshow everywhere. So Instagram, Facebook, Annie Gunshow. If they want to follow the gym, NBS Fitness. Also NBS_fitness on Instagram. They can also check it out at nbsfitness.net. Those are kind of all of the gym places. That's how they can find us.
Very cool. It's not Annie Gunshot.
Not any gunshot, not any gumshoe, not any of the other somehow, I made my name Annie Gunshow so that my real last name Dohak is a little.
It's hard to, it's a little
tough.
Yeah.
It's a little tough for some people. So I made it Annie Gunshow because it was a cute fitness moniker that I didn't know was going to take over my whole life.
Sure.
And it's still screwed up. It's Annie. It's just a total nightmare on autocorrect. So
you can't win, but it's all good. But so Annie Gunshow. But it's great chatting with you, Annie. I guess I don't know. I'll probably see you at the Arnold again, maybe the next time, and then so that'll probably be the next time we see each other. But definitely give Annie a follow. If this interview helped you, please share it. Please give the podcast a 5-star review. Subscribe on iTunes. It helps other people find us. Thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll see you next time. Thanks, guys.